Okay, we have a very special guest today, and I want to introduce Kari Martin. I'll give you her bio in a minute, but some of you will have got it by email, but I just want to tell you how we met Kari. We go to Rugby Community Hall, which a lot of you know and have heard us mention many, many times, and it's just a good old hymn sing. It's a kind of like a musician jam. You never know who's going to be there. And they never practice a thing, and they play without a note. It's absolutely amazing, the talent there. I think we had 10 or 12 guitars last Saturday, right? Would be about that. And we had Roy Hastings on the wash tub, which was a good treat. So it's just a real good time of fellowship and fun. And like I said, the musicians are amazing. So we lost our fiddler last year. We had this little guy, we call him Little Joe. And he passed away this past summer. And so we were really missing the fiddling, because he just had so much life. He just got up there. Joe was so full of life. So we went in a month or so ago, and there was a fiddler. And it was Kari. Kari has moved to Oro, I'm not sure how long ago, but I'll read you her bio. We were so excited to have Kari join us, and she is amazingly talented. So you'll enjoy her in just a minute. But Kari wrote us this. I grew up on a farm just outside of Cookstown with music as a constant in our family. From taking violin lessons where I studied classical music to playing Saturday nights with my grandparents in their old-time band, Shelburne Fiddlers Contest. Nursing homes, weddings, local fairs, and events. Music was something that was part of my everyday life. I went on to study musical education at Laurier in Waterloo and taught private music lessons, music for young children, and in the public system for 10 years. I left teaching to stay home with my two boys, who are 12 and 15, and we now reside in Ormo Dante, where my husband farms and does construction. We attend Cornerstone Baptist Church in Aurelia and enjoy our community and church family. Now, Kari probably could have told you all that and you wouldn't have had to listen to me, but I got to say something. So, yeah. We're so glad to have Kari here. Would you give her a warm welcome? And you'll thoroughly enjoy her music.
Good morning. I was asked to play a few songs for you. So Mary sent an email asking if I could play one of my favorite classical songs, my favorite fiddle song, my favorite hymn, which I couldn't choose one. So I thought I would just share some of these favorites with you. So the first one I'm going to do is my favorite classical song, which is called Salut d'Amour, and it was written in the early 1900s by Edward Elgar. So I'll play that first. So the next song I thought I'd play is one of my favorite fiddle songs that I play with my grandma and my grandpa often, and it's called Maple Sugar. And I'm going to play it solo and not put Marion through playing with me. Excuse me, I couldn't decide which my favorite hymn was. So I chose How Great Thou Art, and Here I Am, Lord. So I'm going to start with How Great Thou Art. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I'm not sick. And the last one that we're going to do is my favorite Christmas song, and of course it's "O Holy Night." As soon as I get the music. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kari. I don't know where else you could get a concert in that's fun and that leaves you with a feeling of a great way to start the Christmas season that isn't all wrapped up in mall shopping and Christmas. It's just a real reminder in a quiet place of what a night it was. So thank you, Kari. Kari's going to slip out at some point because she's a full-time mother still. Most of us are past that, we're just grandparents, and she has to take her son to an appointment. So we're so thankful that you were here, Kari. Thanks so much for coming, and hopefully you'll be back sometime. Thank you. Many months ago, we were reading the Aurelia Matters, and we saw a headline that really caught our attention. And it wasn't too long after that, I got an email from Joan saying, hey, did you read this? Maybe that would be a good fit for your prime time. So, a long roundabout way, we got a hold of Lois Belsey. Did I say it right? I said it right? Good. And she is a very busy person, so we've been wanting to have her for months, and she travels all over. But anyways, we're so glad she's here today. And I have just a short bio on her because we did send out the long form, and she has many, many stories she can tell you herself, and I know she'll be very interesting. So I just put a short one together that Lois was born and raised in Midland. She trained in nursing in Hamilton, midwifery in Edmonton, and nursing practice in Hearst before she began her missionary career in Vietnam in 1974. In 1976, she moved to Indonesia. She will be sharing with us her journey and life among the Moni tribe. Did I say that right, Lois? Moni? Who lived in, I can't even say that. I'll let her tell you where that is. It is in Indonesia, anyways. Lois lived and served there with the people for 43 years and is now back home in Midland and doing many speaking engagements and just as busy as ever. So without saying any more, we're going to ask Lois to come up, and she's going to tell us a little bit of her life. I think she has some videos for us, so come on up, Lois. Would you welcome Lois?
I'm going to grab this. Grab one of these. I don't like standing way up there, so I'm going to stand, way down here, and I'm going to grab this. Yes, I am delighted to be with you. Oh yeah, what am I supposed to do? Go over here maybe. Is that better? The speaker. Am I behind the, okay. Actually, I've been busy not doing a lot of speaking. During COVID, I couldn't do much speaking. One of the things I was going to say is I haven't been doing much speaking in English, and most of my speaking when I was overseas was in other languages, so you have to forgive me if I can't always think of the right word in English right away. It's not really my first language anymore, so anyway, thank you for inviting me here. I do want to show you a video before we get started. I will say the place I lived for most of my life was in Hitaripa, and it is in Indonesia on the island of West Papua. West Papua has had many names over the years: Dutch New Guinea, West Irian, Irian Jaya, Papua, and now it's West Papua. So you know where Papua New Guinea is, directly north of Australia. Well, West Papua is the western half of the same island that Papua New Guinea is. So it's not an independent country, but it's a province of Indonesia, so it's under Indonesian, but the people are similar to the Papua New Guinea people. So, and there are many, many tribes. There's about 350 tribes in the island, all speaking different languages. So it's quite a formidable place to work. I lived in the interior, in the Western Highlands, about 200 kilometers interior, and we flew on a small 5-seater airplane to land on a grass airstrip. And then other places that I ministered as time went on were in the foothills to the north, where we had to go by helicopter, and then to the swamplands in the north, where we traveled by plane and then by dugout canoe. But hopefully you'll see some of that. One of the videos I wanted to show was in a format that wasn't showable, so we're going to see the second one. And I want you to see the videos first. We'll need to have the lights down, if that's possible. Just so that you have a little better understanding. The people that I worked with are the closest remaining to the Stone Age, so they're very different than we are. So let's watch this first. I love everything about my life in Papua as an international worker, and I am also called of God, which is foundational. I have been an international worker in Papua since 1976, and I am still excited to go back one more time. What on earth would keep calling me back to such a faraway, strange place where everyone and everything is so different and life is so difficult? I love the beauty and the lushness of the place where I live and minister. I live in a wooden chalet in paradise, surrounded by colorful poinsettia and bougainvillea trees, amaryllis and roses. We are 5,000 feet high in the mountains, so the weather is temperate and the view awesome. The land is fertile, the garden lush, and abounding in more tropical fruit than we can possibly eat, so we have lots to share with others as well. I love the simplicity of our life. We enjoy gardening as a hobby and enjoy the fruit of our labors. Carrots, lettuce, tomatoes, beans, onions, strawberries, raspberry. Our food is healthy and delicious. Everything is made from scratch, no packages or cans. There isn't much we don't eat, because cooking and baking are also hobbies we enjoy. We cook on a wood stove. I can make a fast, hot fire, but don't do so well with an electric one. We do have help from Mariana, who prepares veggies, does dishes, washes clothes and floors, as well as weeding and bringing in firewood. Water comes from a spring in the mountains. The middle top quarter of the picture is stored in a large container. This one I'm cleaning and heated by a coil in the stove. I love that we have some things that make life easy and pleasant. We have satellite internet, Skype phone, TV for worship DVDs, sermons, and movies. Solar cells power these and other electrical appliances. Computer, printer, fridge washer, washing machine, and we have a backup generator. We get abundant good exercise walking up and down the mountain from our house to the airstrip or village daily, walks along the airstrip with our doggies, or visiting with friends, or at the river skipping stones and enjoying God's creation with company. Sometimes we have a picnic there too. For vigorous exercise, you can go mountain climbing. I love the way we get to learn to trust God about everything. He gives us creative ideas and ability above and beyond to fix things like smoky stoves, leaky water pipes, lawnmowers. Sometimes he sends people to help us, fellow missionaries, short-term missions teams, pilots, and sometimes he supernaturally stops leaks and makes computers work. We probably ask God to change the weather more than anyone else anywhere. We ask him to send the rain to swell the dry rivers, to stop the rain, or make the rivers go down, to make a hole in the clouds so the helicopter can take off, or calm the wind so we can land or take off safely, note the orange windsock blowing, or to bring out more sun on the solar panels to fill our batteries. And then there are the health issues. For ourselves, we trust God to heal painful knees, sore hips, headaches, sciatica, and he always comes through, sometimes with the loving help of a friend. For others, most of the time we don't know how to help them medically. Malaria, pneumonia, and dysentery are easy to treat, but often symptoms are vague and difficult to diagnose, and then we give vitamins and Tylenol and call out to God and see how he works. I remember Elkanah, whom we thought was going to die. We treated her with antibiotics, we don't know what for, and prayed, and she recovered. And there was Peniel, who couldn't run and play with the other kids. I thought he had serious heart issues. We prayed, and the next time I visited, he walked far over the trail to tell me God had healed him. And his dad, too. God is so awesome. I love animals, especially doggies, and they me. Meals are boring without them, and there is nothing like a doggie welcoming you home when you've been at church for 2 hours or in the lowlands for 2 weeks. They love Pilipus because he cares for them so well when we are away, even now for months at a time. Puppies are an added blessing. We just had a miracle pup from Twinkie after she miscarried. Star was born in our house and grew up there until we gave her away to Pilipus's family. I love enjoying Sabbath at home in Hitaripa. It usually starts Saturday evening with a game, involves working on a puzzle Sunday afternoon, as well as extra quiet times or walks and evening worship times in English. I love the variety of my life, the excitement and the challenge. There is never a dull moment. There are quiet times at home, in my chair, working on Moni books, lessons and sermons on my computer, translating lessons with an informant, scanning books in either Nabide or Santani, and then full-on ministry time in the villages, teaching Bible and health, preaching, counseling, praying for people, and just sitting around the fire, visiting and eating. Travel to get to the villages is also varied, sometimes by helicopter, sometimes by small airplane, sometimes by dugout canoe, and while in the villages, walking from place to place. Living in each place is different too. In most places, I have a little trail house where we can eat and sleep up off the floor, like in Dofo, Iritoi, Tutumo, Tomosiga. In other places like Safoidi, we stay in our national workers' homes, or in little rooms they have made special for our visit, like here in Wolamambutu. There we sleep on the floor, in tents and mosquito nets, and eat sitting on the floor, outside on the ground, and sometimes around the fire. We are always blessed with sleep and good food all along our journeys. I love to see God at work and work together with him. I especially love to see Satan defeated because he is a defeated foe after all. These Tomosiga evangelists' lives were changed as they learned to forgive those who had offended them. Light came on in the faces of people from Wahuka as they heard the word and had it demonstrated to them by the treating of their illnesses and prayer for their need. Look at the beaming faces of those whom God supernaturally healed and delivered. Peria of painful knees as she trudged up and down hills daily to check her fish nets. Johanna's son was withdrawn and silent from demon oppression one moment, beaming and attentive the next. Many had testimonies of God's ministry to them. Dofo had many changes, people becoming more helpful and friendly, gardens once again flourishing, people continuing to give praise to God more than a year after the team prayed for them. Don't feel sorry for me. I am one of the most blessed people on the face of the earth. I love everything about my life in Papua as an international worker. Well, that gives you just a little idea of what my life involved. As Mary told you, I grew up in a family in Midland, and I'm from the Midland Alliance Church. I grew up there, and I still attend there now. And as a child, I was taken to Sunday school, kids groups, youth groups. And because my family loved Jesus and loved me, it was just very natural for me to come to love Jesus at an early age. And not only that, it was a Christian missionary alliance church, and so we had missionaries in our home and in our church all the time. And I saw their videos, and I touched their artifacts, and I heard them speak, and they were my heroes and heroines, and becoming a missionary nurse was the only thing I ever wanted to do and be. And so that's what I did. I went on to schooling and prepared myself to go overseas. I went when I was 24. And Vietnam, we couldn't stay because of the war. Thailand, I was for a few months, couldn't stay there because I couldn't get a visa. And then God took me to Papua, which is where he wanted me in the end. And it was a great life. When I went to Papua, this video was made in 2016, so fairly recently. When I first went there in 76, things were very different. Probably Hitaripa, where I lived, was almost untouched by the outside world. There were no stores, no government, nothing from the outside world. There was a church, there was a church school, grade 1 to 6, and there was a Bible school, and there was an airstrip, a grass airstrip for the airplane to land on, and houses around the airstrip, and that was it. There was nothing else. People traveled by walking, Shank's pony, and they communicated by word of mouth. There was nothing else. And so it was the missionaries that walked in and made airstrips and brought radios, ham radios in to communicate with the outside world in those days. And in all of the places that we visited, and there were many, we helped them open airstrips. Not that I knew a lot about airstrips, but people helped me help them. Probably about 7 or 8 airstrips that we opened for the people that I have worked amongst, and brought in radios for them to communicate. My belief is that God created us in his image and for his pleasure. And that's why he sent Jesus, and that's why he created heaven for us. And so that was the message that I had to bring to a people who didn't even have a word for God. We named God the chief of the skies because the only supernatural beings that they knew were evil spirits, and evil spirits they feared and they appeased, because evil spirits affected every part of their lives. They affected their health, their food, accidents, weather, everything. They attributed to the work of evil spirits, working through shamans, through people who went to shamans to curse or to restore what was bad. Everything was like that. And their evil spirits were not known for love or for trustworthiness, but they were known for power, and they were feared. And so, because the God that I know is a God who loves, and our relationship with him is built on trust, my job was to teach and to demonstrate God's love and his trustworthiness. But you can't leave out his power, because the only thing they knew was power. And if the God that we demonstrated and taught about was not a God of power, we might as well shut our mouths, because why would they listen? They wouldn't. And so that was my job. I told you I trained as a nurse and as a midwife, so that was one of the ways that I was able to demonstrate God's love to them, by treating their illnesses and by training them to treat illnesses. And I trained probably a total of 100 women and maybe 60 or 70 evangelists and their wives over the period of time in many, many villages, to diagnose and treat illness, to do preventative health care, to give medicine, and all of those things. But we never just gave medicine to people. We always prayed before we did give medicine. And it was very interesting, because in many of the villages where we ministered, and there were people that didn't know Jesus yet, of course, they would prefer to come to us. Now, in the end, I said at the beginning there weren't any clinics, and there weren't. But as time went on, there were government clinics, and the people preferred to come to us because they said our medicine was better. Well, an aspirin is an aspirin is an aspirin, and an antibiotic is an antibiotic. And our medicine was no different than the government medicine, but what was the difference? We prayed. We asked God, and they knew that. And so they always preferred to come to us or to the evangelist. They said our medicine was better. And of course, they wouldn't listen when we said it wasn't, but it was God. Sometimes they came, and they didn't come for medicine. They came for prayer. And I remember this one time, a young boy, and it was in Dofel. This lady here that's with me, Felicia, you might have seen her, you might not have recognized her, but she was in the video with me. She came to visit with one of the short-term missions teams. And yeah, we had a wonderful time there together. So where was I? I lost my train of thought there. Oh, yes, this young boy. Well, this wasn't when she was there, but a young boy, they brought a young boy in a coma. And we have no ways to do any testing, right? All we can do is we can take a temperature, we can take a pulse, we can ask questions of symptoms that they're having, but you can't do anything else. And so you're just doing a lot of things by guess and by asking God how to treat her, how to pray. And so he'd already been to government clinics and had medicine, right? But he was still in a coma. And so we said to the mother, we're not really sure what to give for medicine. And of course, he can't take it because he's in a coma. And she said, we didn't come for medicine, we came for prayer. And so we prayed for him, and I have to tell you that I didn't always, how can I say that? It's not always easy to pray in faith, right? When you see something that, aside from an absolute miracle from God, it isn't going to happen. But we did, and we always do, because God says, I am the healer. I am Jehovah Rapha. That is my name. And so we always ask, and God does increase our faith the more we ask and the more we see him answer. Well, we prayed for him, and they took him home, and we did show the mother how to give sugar salt solution, which is rehydration fluid, into the mouth, just on a spoon. Showed her how to do that, sent her home. This was in the afternoon. Well, we hadn't heard anything. The next morning, I said to my evangelist, so how's the little boy? And he said, oh, he got better, and they took him home. They took him on the boat home. They didn't even come and say anything. They came for prayer. They got prayer. He got better. They left. So whose faith was it, right? God does miraculous things. You saw in the movie about Perea and with the beaming face. She's wanted when the team was there. She asked for prayer. And she had to go up and down these hills every day and down, up and down to go to her fishnets with her knees aching, and God miraculously healed her knees. And that little boy, Peniel, that was back in, was that first team? That was back in 2004. And yeah, he just was wheezing. He couldn't run, couldn't play, couldn't anything. And the parents wanted to send him out to hospital, and I thought, oh my, Papuans don't get good care in hospital. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so I said, I think the best thing is for us to pray. And so we prayed in there again. How big was my faith? I'm not sure, but we prayed. And the next time I came by helicopter, he had walked over the trail like 2 days to come and tell me that God had healed him. So God did miraculous things like that, over and over and over again. And I say that in spite of us. He healed children of seizures. He healed people of malaria. He healed me. I remember, speaking of knees, for the most part, I don't have trouble with my knees, but I was having a lot of pain with my knees. And my house is a 2-story house, and so every day you got to go up to the bathroom and back down, So you're going up and down the stairs, and you saw the hill that I walked down to go to the airstrip and go. So we did that every day. So my friend and I, Mary, that you saw in the picture, she was with me for the last 10 years of my life. She was an answer to prayer that God brought. And so we, one night we said, okay, we're going to ask God for a miracle here to heal these knees. And so we did. Together we agreed and we prayed. And every time from that time on, for probably maybe a couple of weeks anyway, every time I went up and down those stairs, I said, hey, God, this is your daughter Lois. I'm just reminding you, I'm waiting for my knees not to hurt me anymore. Every time I went down the hill. Every time I went down the stairs, I said that, just reminding you, God, this is your daughter Lois. I'm still here. I'm still waiting. And one day we were walking down that mountain, and I looked over to Mary, and I said, Mary, my knees don't hurt anymore. And they haven't hurt since. And I didn't have knee replacement surgery. Praise God. I'm not saying God doesn't use medical care. He does. But that was a miraculous one. So demonstrating God's love and God's power. Medical or health is a big issue. And as I said, we believe in Jehovah Rapha. And we believe in the prayer of faith for the sick. And that's one thing that I taught our evangelists well and demonstrated. If any man is sick among you, what does the Bible say in James 5? It doesn't say if any man is sick among you, let him go to the doctor. Let him go buy some medicine. It doesn't say that. What it says is if any of you are sick, let him call for the elders and let them anoint him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And so who are we with people who are used to going to evil spirits with all of their ailments to ask for healing, not to share with them that God has the same thing in mind, and God is greater than the evil spirits. Now, another thing related to health and illness is that, and this may come as a surprise to you, but not all illness is caused by germs. Some illness is caused by sin. And so what is the remedy if we've sinned and we're being punished? I believe that happens. Confession of sin, right? Confess sin. And so the reason for the sickness is gone. The person gets well. I saw it over and over again. And what does it say in James? It also says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. So keep that in mind, friends. There's another part to this, and it may be more prevalent over there, but I wouldn't say it's not part of life here. Some sickness is caused by evil spirits or by curses. And so if you give medicine to someone who's sick because they've been cursed, is it going to work? No, it's not. Because the cause of the sickness is not a germ. And so the medicine is just going to bounce off them. And so what is the remedy for someone who's been cursed? Break the curse. Can we break the curse in Jesus' name? Of course we can break the curse in Jesus' name. And sometimes they might need deliverance from evil spirits in order to be well again. And so near the beginning of my time in Papua, I said to God, God, I cannot exist here without the gift of discernment of spirits. And so God gave me the gift of discernment of spirits. And I believe the gift of discernment of spirits is particularly operational in that kind of a situation where you're trying to discern what is causing what is going on here. Is it being caused by germs, or is this accident caused because somebody is accident prone, or is it because there's something else at work? And God, that's a spiritual gift that the Holy Spirit gives. He says the Holy Spirit gives these gifts to the church for the good and the building up of the faith of believers. And so it was operational, and the gift of healing as well. Let me see here. I wanted to share a few instances of showing God's power over Satan as other than illness. Illness is one very obvious one. Near the beginning of the time when I was visiting in the lowlands on those dugout canoes. It was before we had an airstrip upriver, and so what we used to have to do is we would land in one place and we'd take a dugout canoe upriver and minister up there and then come back down in the boat and go on the rest of the trip. So we would do like a 2-week trip and visit 5 or 6 different villages, but that's what we still had to do. We had to go upriver and then back down. So this was back in 94, I believe. And we'd had a real struggle getting there. I had a friend, and I usually traveled by myself with national team, but not with other missionaries. But this particular time, I said, somehow God just nudged me and said, ask your friend Anne. So I invited Anne to go with me. She was working with youth in the city. She wasn't really a jungle person like me. And so, but anyway, she agreed to come, and she did some work with the youth as we traveled, but she got desperately sick in Hitarpa before we went. And she had dysentery, she had malaria, I don't know what all she had, but she was so sick. And she was taking medicine and starting to feel a little bit better, but she was pretty sick. At the same time, my neighbor, who was about 8.5 months pregnant, and one of the ladies that I had trained in midwifery, I got a message that night, the night before we were supposed to leave, that she was bleeding. And that's not a good sign for someone who's almost due to be bleeding. It's usually a sign of that the placenta is over the mouth of the uterus, so the baby has to be taken by cesarean section. That's usually the cause of it. And so here I am with Anne, on the one hand, deathly ill, my friend there, dying. And Anne says to me, maybe this is a sign that I shouldn't go because I'm so sick. I said, no, it's a sign that you should go because we are having a lot of opposition against this upcoming trip, which is a sure sign that God has great things to do. And so we should just press in and go. And that's what one of the things God taught me is if you're sick before you go, then just trust God and go, and as you go, the sickness will dissipate. So that's one time when the sickness is not because of germs, it's because of opposition that we're having from the dark realm. And so she said, oh, okay, and that's what happened, and she did get better. Now, here's my friend. So I went over to see her, and of course, what is there that you can do in the middle of the jungle in the evening? Our planes in Hitarpa had to land at 9:30 in the morning, before 9:30 in the morning, because we had a wind curfew. So we said we had to plan our emergencies before 9:30 in the morning so that people could get in or out. But anyway, this was night, so there was no way there'd be anything. So I said, well, God, I'm going to ask you to just replace all of the blood that she's losing so that she will live until morning and be able to be taken to hospital. I didn't have the faith at that point to believe God to do the whole thing. So that's what I asked. I said, God, would you just replace her blood so she'll live and be able to be evacuated? And God did that. And she lived, and the plane came and took her to the hospital. And she lived. The baby she had didn't, but she did. And the plane came back and got us and took us down to where we were going. And we went on that trip. And that's so that was spiritual opposition, getting to it. So we got to Dofo and got on the boat and went upriver and had a good ministry up there. Coming back down, it was normally it would be about I'm going to say 3 or 4 hour trip if we were going straight. And we left at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, because we wanted to do it before too hot. Well, that boat motor kept dying. It died, and we didn't have any paddles. We didn't usually do good preparation. At this point, we had boat motors, right? So the boat's going backwards and sideways and all different ways down the river. We got to this place where there was a missionary, and he gave us another motor to use. So we switched. We left our motor, took that motor, and it, lo and behold, if it didn't die, so we stopped and fixed it, got it fixed, we thought. Took off again. I was looking out and I said, do you think we should stay here overnight? No, we'll get home before dark, they said. And so away we went with this boat motor that kept dying, right? And at the very end, you have to start going upriver. Well, before we went going upriver, it was dark. And so the guys looked at me, they said, do you have a flashlight? So here's this guy sitting on the front of the boat here with a flashlight, right? You got this river that's as wide as wider than the church. Not huge, but and upriver, right? The motor dying. In the river, submerged logs. In the river, crocodiles. Here we are, going upriver, boat. My friend was hearing angels, and I was hearing demons screaming. We were praying and singing. And I said to the nationals, why don't we just pull over here? We can see the edge, and we'll just sleep at the side of the river here and go home in the morning. Oh, no, I can see the light of Dofo. Well, you can't see the light of Dofo. There was no light at all. Anyway, we got home at 8 in the evening, and it gets dark at 6. And we left at 6 in the morning, so it took us 14 hours to get there. And we got there, and the fellows that had gone with me, the nationals, said, we are those who have come back from the dead. And when we got to Dofo, we found out that they had indeed cursed us to die. Why had they cursed us to die? They'd cursed us to die because when we came, we didn't bring food and stuff like that for them. We brought the gospel, and they wanted food. And we hadn't brought what they wanted, and so they cursed us to die. And so we got up in the church, and we said, well, here we are. Didn't work, did it? Guess who's stronger than the one you asked to curse us to die? And there's a church in Dofo today, but Dofo has been a place of much spiritual opposition. When Felicia was there, we had strong teaching on repentance. And one of the verses that we used, and we do use, is from 2 Chronicles 7. No, that's not the right one. Where is it? 2 Chronicles. Here we go. 7:14. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. And so we taught them from that verse, and they did. Many of them came forward, repented of their sins. It was amazing to see. We asked for pastors and workers first to let God deal with their hearts, and he did. And one of the things that God did was healing their land. They had their gardens were not flourishing. Any of them, the fruit, the vegetables, anything that they grew, their pigs were not doing well. They were all a mess. And it was almost instantaneous, the change in their gardens and in their animals. And I heard after we left from my friends on the coast, so this is another place that's a couple 100 kilometers from the coast. One fella had gone there the day we left Dofo. I think he went out to the coast, and he got off the plane and went racing out to tell his friends, you should see what happened in Dofo. The gardens just started to come back to life again when people repented, and he was spreading this news all over about what God did. And he did that in several of the villages. So power miracles, miracles against Satan, vegetation growing. I mentioned health. Another is babies. We had so many women come. And of course, this is of interest to women all over the world. They can't get pregnant, right? Can't have babies. And of course, over there, not having children is a reason to be divorced. And so they really have to have kids. And near the time that I left, a couple of the young girls said to me, Nona Lois, that's what they called me, there are prayer babies everywhere. There's prayer baby on that mountain, on this mountain, over in that village here, just pointing all over here like this. Prayer babies are everywhere. People that have been able to have babies as a result of prayer. God intervened for them in ways that they needed to show him that he was powerful. Weather. I said we asked God for the weather more than anyone. And I can remember this one time we were in one of the lowland areas traveling by boat, and if the water's too high, it's hard to travel. If you're going downriver, it takes you too fast and you could crash. If you're going upriver, well, it slows you down. So we were going downriver, and it was really high, and it was raining. And so we'd been praying up a storm, God, please stop the rain, please stop. And he didn't. It just kept raining. And so I remember before we went to bed, I said, my last prayer to God was, God, if you don't want to stop the rain, just please make the river go down. And so we got up the next day and went out to check the river. And if the river hadn't gone down a foot, rained all night, and the river went down a foot. Amazing, eh? God does amazing things. We were in one of the places where we travel by helicopter with a team. And in order to get the team out by helicopter, they had to shuttle 3 times. And in and out, in and out, in and out to take us and all of our stuff. And I was with the last bunch, and there was a young fellow with me, one of the, he was about 20, I guess. And the weather was closing in. It wasn't a very good day, and it was closing in. And he was saying, I bet you we're going to get left here. I bet you we're going to get left here. What's going to happen? What are we going to do if we get left here? And what are those people going to do out there without me there to help them? So they were having a fit. So I looked up at the sky, and there was a little tiny speck of blue in the sky, right? And not really very often does God give me what I believe is a gift of faith. But that day he did. And I said, God, you see that little speck of blue up there? Would you just make that speck of blue fill the sky? And over the next 20 minutes, that little speck of blue just opened up, filled the sky. The helicopter came in and took us out. And that young fella tells that story to this day. He's a pastor now. Those are the kinds of things. God is a powerful God. So he's powerful, he's loving. Is he trustworthy? Is he trustworthy? And how do we show that he's trustworthy? How do we demonstrate that he's trustworthy? Well, I've shared with you some of the things because they're all interrelated. He's trustworthy because he cares that we have food. And he replenished their gardens. He's trustworthy because he cares about people's sicknesses and makes them well or comforts them. He's trustworthy because he looks after the weather. He brings water even to drink, like the people were dependent on water for drinking and for everything. It's a little different in this country. One of the ones I didn't share is about mechanics, airplanes. These little airplanes, they're forever breaking down. And lots of times they break down and it's, again, opposition, right? It's not that there's something wrong with the plane necessarily. It's that there's something wrong with somebody has cursed it. And so I've seen pilots lay hands on the motor of the plane and cast the demons out of the motor so the plane would go, and it does. And then there are times, of course, when they have to fix it, and because planes do break down, but they have to know the difference. And the nationals see this too, the trustworthiness of God to look after them and look after us, no matter what comes, no matter what comes. Because God's promises are yes and amen, always. What he says, he will do. And when he sends us or asks us to do something, he'll help us to do it. Now, I did mention at the beginning that I was busy here in Canada, not with speaking so much as I didn't say what I was doing. But I'm quite involved in my home church now. I'm an elder in my church. And Felicia and I and a couple other women do ministry with other women, hurting women, women who have been through many different things, abuse, physical, sexual. One gal we're working with right now has been involved in ritual satanic abuse, which is more common than you would like to think, and many other things. And so I just thank God that he is the same everywhere in the world. You don't have to go to Papua to know that God is loving and trustworthy and powerful. For whatever it is, we need him to be and to do. He's here and he's able, and he wants us to trust him. He wants us to trust him with everything. We may not always have to trust him with everything here, like I pretty well had to. And I didn't mention a couple of things. I mentioned computers, and there were more times than one when I prayed over my computer. But I still pray over my computer today here in Canada because it costs a lot of money to take it to the repair shop. And I know over there I had leaky pipes, and I know one time I said to God, God, it would be just as easy for you to stop that pipe leaking. Just stop it leaking. I'm going away today, and I haven't got time to deal with this leak. It was the pipe was leaking in my stove, right? It was going to make a mess of the stove. And he did. He stopped the leak in my stove. We had to trust him. I like to say, Mary and I say, we learned to trust God, got to learn to trust God about everything all the time. And I think God delights in us trusting him with everything all the time. In our lives and in the lives of those around us, we live in a messy world. We live in a dark world. We live in a needy world, right? We do. I have a lot of friends in my neighborhood. And I make a lot of friends walking my dog. I have a little dog that I got here, and he's introduced me to all my neighbors. And lots of people that aren't my neighbors, I meet them in the park walking or in the dog park. And I've gotten to be friends with them. And my little dog is with a lady right now who doesn't know Jesus yet. And she has cancer. And she doesn't know what to believe, but I keep telling her that I'm praying for her, that I'm praying that God will be the one who takes her cancer away, and as well as that he will give her peace in her heart that passes understanding, because it's only God that can give peace that passes understanding in this world. And he does, and he can. And he can do whatever you need in your situation here in Barrie, as well as whatever I need in my situation in Midland now. The church in Papua, when I left, there has been no one to replace me in the village except the nationals that I trained. And I spent my life training nationals to do the work of the ministry, and they're doing it. As I was leaving, they said to me, "Don't worry, Nona Lois, don't worry. The seeds that you've planted will water, and God will bring a harvest." And there was a harvest of souls before we left, many, but there are probably many more all the time. And those evangelists, if you pray for missions, national workers need our prayers as much or more than the missionaries do. My evangelists live in places that I could never live, under conditions that I could visit them. But for me to live there constantly would be very, very hard. And they do it. And many of them have left their homes and gone to other places. They're not in their own village. They've left, and they don't get a wage either, most of them. They're relying on the Lord. They're relying on the Lord for their daily food, for education for their children, for their health, for their encouragement. And so, I encourage you to think about national workers who are in places like that, like the ones that you saw here, as well as all over the world. Surely people are ready to hear about Jesus here as well as there.